Welcome to the Ultimate Dental Podcast, the place where you can learn how to create a dental practice and a business life that you love. Listen in with Dr. David Moffet as he interviews successful entrepreneurs and successful business people and successful dentists as they share their business successes, their stories, and their breakthrough ideas, sharing pearls of wisdom that you can take back to your practice and implement immediately so that you can have that great practice with more patients, higher profits, and less stress. This is the podcast where great dental practices meet with successful business processes. Thanks for tuning in to the Ultimate Dental Podcast, the podcast where thought leaders, industry experts, and thriving practice owners reveal their very best tips, tools, and strategies that will help you grow your dental practice faster. Now, here's your host, Dr. David Moffet.
Hi, and welcome to today's episode of the Ultimate Dental Podcast. I'm your host, Dr. David Moffet, and with me today, I'm very proud to say I have Dr. Howard Farran, the founder and owner of Dentaltown. Now, if you don't know what Dentaltown is, then you must have been living under a rock for the last 30 years because Dentaltown is the place where dentists go to get their information. But more importantly, Howard's here to share his wisdom about the future of dentistry and where it's going, and also to look back on some of the things in his past in dental, as well as a dentist and now as a retired dentist. So welcome to the microphone, welcome to the camera, Dr. Howard Farran. Great to have you.
It's great to be back. It's good to see you again.
Yeah, when are you going to come down under again?
Well, you know, I've done 5 tours in Australia. Ruth Port of Port Laboratories used to have me come in every 5 years. I did Auckland, Sydney, Melbourne, Perth, Adelaide, Gold Coast. I used to love that tour. It was 10 days in Australia every 5 years. I'm due to come back and do another one, especially now that my brother lives there. My brother lives in Sydney.
Well, I think last time you came, he'd just moved to Australia, to Sydney. So,
And now he's in Phoenix. That's so funny. I'm talking to you, and he's in Phoenix at a conference.
It's a crazy world. I was just talking to some relatives of my wife's about visiting them in the UK next year, and the week we wanted to visit them, they're going to be overseas. So we had to kind of flip a couple of things and just come go somewhere first and then come and see them at the end. It's quite weird, but anyway, that's the world. Good to see the world is back traveling. I have not been overseas since COVID hit. You know, I got back from my 30th wedding anniversary holiday in December 2019. COVID hit in March 2020, and I've been on less than 4 trips. I think 4 trips on a plane since. I live halfway between Sydney and Melbourne, so I drive from Melbourne.
Congratulations on making it 30 years. I only made it 20 years, and then I was fired. You made it 30. She hasn't fired you yet, so good on you.
Yeah, coming up to 35 this year. So
Wow.
it's been an interesting journey, you know, because she wasn't in dental. She works in dental now with me, and she worked in dental in my practice, and now in coaching we work side by side. So really good. But enough about me, Howard. Let's talk about you. You told me before we came on air that when the pandemic hit and you had to close down for 2 months, you decided you would sell your practice, and today's dental was, you know, the whole foundation of who you were. I felt, you know, you did the research, you did the squat, you set up opposite a shopping centre with a lot of vehicle traffic going in, couldn't miss your place. You had a successful dental practice, and then along came Dentaltown. So tell me about where you are now in terms of do you miss dentistry as a practitioner, and what's going on with Dentaltown?
Well, I miss, I do miss clinical dentistry. I do. It's, I miss removing wisdom teeth the most and molar endo the second, but I actually retired. I actually thought I was going to retire, and I did retire. And it was great timing because my mom needed me to live with her in Wichita for a month, and one of my boys had a daycare. She needed me to live with him for a couple months in Beeville, Texas, and another one needed me for a couple months to live there for daycare in Apache Junction, Arizona, and it worked out perfect. But after a couple years, I got AI religion. I realized that, my God, I've had, Dentaltown came out in 1999. It was 5 years before Facebook, and we had 7 million questions and answers. And we had created 650 online CE courses. And I had the transcripts of 1,600 of my Dentistry Uncensored podcasts. And we had all the magazines, Orthotown, Hygiene Town, and Dentaltown since 1994. And I put all of that content into a AI program, and I cannot believe it, David. I can ask it any question, and it instantly answers it profoundly with links to the research paper. I mean, these dentists are posting the research, the links, the PubMed. I mean, it is unbelievable. And, I came out with the first all dental social media platform in 1999 with Dentaltown. And now it's 25 years later, and we're just a couple of weeks away of launching the first dental chatbot in dentistry. And I mean, it's just going to be a game changer. I mean, it's completely, because you used to go on Dentaltown to ask a question, hoping that someone like you would come back and answer it. Well, now all the questions and answers for 25 years and everything we do, it'll answer you instantly, provide the links. If it's quoting an article that was published, it'll have the link. If it's quoting, whatever it's quoting, the source will be there. I mean, it blows my mind. I mean, the motto was Dentaltown, as I was dentaltown.com, no dentist after practice solo again. And now we're changing the name to Dentaltown AI. And with Dentaltown AI, you should already know instantly what every dentist already knew. I mean, oh my God, it is. And I go through these other, I got 300,000 followers on Facebook, and I got like 30 on LinkedIn and Twitter and Instagram and all this stuff. So I look at those questionnaire Reddits, my favorite, and I go of the other ones, and I take any question that they drop in Reddit, and most of the answers are like one line or more. I drop that question in Dentaltown AI, and it's like someone just presented you a lecture, the complete answer to your question. I mean, just so this is something. It's just unbelievable what AI can do. I mean, and I got that religion in September, so I've been back here every day at Dentaltown since, and we had to hire a bunch of new Python programmers, and we got it. And I mean, it's just, I seriously think AI is going to be bigger than Industrial Revolution, because remember, we lived through the internet. I remember in 94 when AOL came out and Amazon went public for the first 94, 95, 96, 97. I just kept looking at it and was like, what is this? And I had to look at it until 1998 before I realized, oh my God, how many times have I been in the middle of a root canal and I'd give anything just to be able to talk to another dentist, especially like an endodontist. And I realized all I had to do was post a picture of the x-ray and some words, and then I would not be alone anymore. And I remember dentists in Australia. I remember one time I posted a case, and the only person who had a case exactly like that was from down under in Australia. It was an orthodontic case. It was a very bizarre, strange case, but another dentist in Australia posted the exact same case. He'd already done it, treated it 5 years previous. I mean, and now it's going to be, now a kid can come along and ask a question, and everybody who ever answered a question or did an online CE course for us or did a podcast or whatever, magazine article, it's all going to be there to be instantly answered. And I think it's going to be an enormous game changer.
I'm just thinking, Howard, you might be doing consultants out of a job.
Well, I think it's going to be even better for consultants, because the one thing consultants are, I notice when consultants come in, they don't have access to the practice manual software. And or they just could run some reports, but the practice management software, it's kind of like bipolar schizophrenia. I mean, you got your practice management software here, and then they got all their QuickBooks accounting here, and they don't talk. Well, AI should be able to go into your practice management software and then go into your accounting software. So you could sit there and say, I'll give you an example. If I said to you, David, am I making money off my PPOs? Well, most dentists, you say, well, how many PPOs do you take? And they'll say, like, I don't know, 3, 4. They don't realize they take like 12, 13, 14. And for a consultant like you to come in there and figure out, what is this guy's true overhead? What is his break-even point? How much on time on the schedule? I mean, you get paid $1 for a root canal. Well, if you take an hour, that's very different than if you take 2 hours. I mean, if it takes 3 hours, that's 3, and I think it'll be able to reach into your accounting software and reach into your practice management software and answer the question immediately. So now the consulting is going, well, how do you implement this? You'll get the answer, but Dennis, I always said consulting was like this. I can make a pizza. There's no question about it. But you know what? It's nice to just order pizza and have it delivered. I can make beef stroganoff. But it's really nice on Uber Eats to call a classy restaurant and Uber. So I could come in here and transition your office from 13 PPOs. Okay, let's say you're losing money on 5. We got to drop that. We got to get a letter out. We're breaking even on these, whatever. Dentists like consultants to implement the plan. And I think that what the most successful consultants on Dentaltown have always been the one that always answer the questions of what they would do if they had been paid the $30,000 fee, $50,000 fee. Because the dentist, like, I know when I'm ordering a pepperoni pizza versus beef stroganoff, and I don't want to hire a consultant. I mean, maybe I'll never drop this insurance plan because maybe my sister's on it or the school teachers of my kids and whatever. They want to know how you think. And then when they realize, oh, David sells beef stroganoff and his wife sells supreme pizza, then they call and they want to implement it. I think consultants, if dentists don't know what your vision is, they're afraid. And so if they know exactly what you do, then they're going to hire you to come in and do it.
Yeah. I love that analogy, and I think you're absolutely right that and I talk to dental coaches that I know that despite the fact that you can put out a pile of information and now AI's got that information, people still want you to come and spoon feed it to them as well. But it's finding those, because dentists, as you know, tend to be very proud of their intelligence. And they think that, well, if I'm smart enough to get into dental school and I'm smart enough to get through dental school and I'm smart enough to get my own office, I'm smart enough to work out how to run things. But the trouble is sometimes it might take them 10 years to work out how to run it when they could have paid somebody to teach them that in 10 months.
And I read through the same experience with personal trainer. I mean, I did 3 Ironmans in a year, and I realized that for me, the personal trainer, what I couldn't do is get my first step out the door. But when I had a coach banging on my front door every morning at 5 o'clock for 3 years, well, you can't just roll over and hit the snooze alarm, and you can't. I mean, he's down there beating on the door, and you get up and you put on your shoes and you're like, sorry, and I overslept, whatever. But that first foot out the door, a dentist has been watching himself have high overhead for 10 years or hasn't decided what to do with his insurance plans. Or in fact, staff, usually they'll tell you, oh my God, when I'm driving to work, I cannot count the seconds till I see my dental assistant, Christina. But God dang, when I see my hygienist, Validia, I start getting ulcers. Well, you shouldn't pay someone money to give you ulcers, but they just can't pull the trigger. They can't figure out what to do. They're mixed up, like, well, the patients all know her, this or that. They need a personal trainer to say, dude, you know what to do, and we're going to do it today. We're gonna do this every single day. So I think that, and the other thing that I've always said is, I look at, there's a lot of successful dental offices. I mean, to sit there and tell people you have $1 million practice, that's really not that big a deal. That's just kind of upper class anymore. But when you start seeing offices that do $3, $4, $5 million in one building, and doc's taking home $1 million, $1.4 million, they usually have a full-time, or they go through a whole consultant every year. And they always say the same thing. I know if I give a consultant $1, I'll get that dollar back this year. I mean, they fine tuning, cranking, and all the big boys doing 3 to 5. You can't name a consultant on Dentaltown in their area. Like say they're in Texas, they've done every consultant that does Texas. I mean, they've done them over 30 years. They just say, we like the fresh blood. We like the enthusiasm, kind of like a personal trainer, like, come on. And what I loved about the personal trainer, they just push you. Like, you would have ran your 7 miles, but you would have done, 15-minute miles. But the personal trainer, makes you do 10-minute miles. And, just, I remember one time I had a personal trainer and, I kept petering out at the end. He tied a rope around my waist. And that last mile, he would be pulling me. You can go faster, and I mean, it was just, you need someone to motivate you. You need someone to push you. You need someone to, as my dad always said, poop or get off the pot. You just can't sit there all day talking about this stuff for years. Poop or get off the pot. Just don't sit there and talk about it. So consultants are going to, and same thing, AI is not going to get rid of in any profession, like say programming or say building a home. What it's going to do is the 10% of the civil engineers who learn AI, they're going to be able to design that dental office or that building 10 times faster than the guy not. So I think 10% of the accountants are going to do 90% of all the accounting. I think 10% of all the civil engineers are going to do 90% of all the work. I mean, like you want to design a 40-story building on these mechanical engineers, a civil engineer AI, you say, okay, I want a 40-story building. Boom, it's right there. Okay, I want it this wide. I mean, you just, whatever change you make, it just implemented immediately. So I think the 90% of the people who are going to lose their job, and we saw this, we've had this debate since the cotton gin, the textile mills. I remember the king almost got overthrown. The people wanted all those textile mills thrown into the ocean because they all thought they were going to lose jobs. And the king and his wise men knew, well, we don't want a country where everybody works a textile mill. It'd be nice if you went into the city and became a doctor, a dentist, a lawyer, something else. I don't want a country where 95% of everybody is in agriculture or cotton for textiles. And I remember when the president of India canceled a big order for John Deere and Caterpillar. And so they hired Milton Friedman to go try to convince the guy. And Milton Friedman walked him out there to this big project where they were using the equipment. And he said, what's wrong? He goes, well, why am I buying all this expensive John Deere and Caterpillar equipment when I got 1 billion people that need jobs? He goes, oh, you're right. Well, let's take away all the equipment and let's take away all their shovels and we'll just give them spoons. And then he realized, yeah, I'd rather have one guy on a John Deere and get this project done today and have 1 million guys there with a spoon. And so it's not about jobs, it's about productivity. And I think AI is going to be interesting because right now, when I would go, I would always get invited to go to these dental practice management software places. And I remember we were at one, it was a big one, it was in Dentrix. And the guy, I'm talking to all the consultants and the guy's talking about all the new features. And all the consultants are saying, look, when we go in there, we go to the report generator, 85% of all the features are never used because it's not intuitive. AI is going to be different because right now, if you don't know what your office overhead is, well, what report are you going to generate on your practice management software? And it's not integrated with your accounting software, but it'll be more intuitive because you could just voice. You say, why is my overhead high? And then it could tell you. I have an opening tomorrow at 3:00. Which patient do you think, who would be the 10 most likely people to fill that? Boom. Can you send them an email right now? Boom. Can you send them a text right now? Boom. I mean, it's just, you think you'll be talking to a human, just like you do on your iPhone with Siri. Hey Siri, how long does it take me to drive from Phoenix to the Grand Canyon? Boom, instantly, And so I think they're going to have a working fundamental relationship. I know a dental office in town where he set up a whole chat GTP account just for his dental office so that when someone calls up and says, how much is a crown? His receptionist says, how much is a crown? Boom, tells him, any policy he has, his hours, address, everything's right there. So it's going to make 10% of the people so damn efficient that the other 90% per industry sector is not going to be able to compete with them, especially if it has to do with anything physical like math, accounting, program. Look at programming. The programmers I used to build Dentaltown, that was another technology. That's, programmers have the same problem as electrical engineers. And electrical engineers, like say you and I are the same age, we went to school, and it was right when they were going from records to CD-ROMs, and we went to college and we learned about CD-ROMs, and we came out and we were writing the CD-ROM deal, and we were just legends. And then one day we got ran over from behind. They go, CD-ROMs? No, we've moved to MP3 streaming video. And then your college degree is useless. You don't know anything about streaming videos. And, it's the same thing with these programmers. They learned Cobalt and Fortran and HTML and C++, and now it's Python, and Python. But what's amazing is you don't have to be a Python programmer. You can pull up your code, and then you can pull up ChatGPT, and ChatGPT can see the screen of your code, and you can say, can you change that to Python? Boom. You can show the end screens. You can pull up some software and say, these are the 5 end screens of the functions of the screens. Can you program the back end so that all works? Boom. So, these guys, in fact, when you talk to an old school programmer, they're taking notes or saying, well, I don't know if we can do that. I don't know this or that. The new ones on Python, you're asking it if you can do that. And usually if it can and this and that, during your 30-minute conversation, it's done. And I've been working with programmers for 25 years, and I'm just like speechless. Every time I've added a feature to this, I'll come in, I'll drive to work, and I'm all excited. I'm thinking about this. And I said, well, can we do this? And I said, well, what do we want to do? This? Oh, okay, I get it. They got ChatGPT pulled up. They got the software pulled. They go, okay. Here, give me a couple minutes. And okay, there. How does that look? And it's done. In the old world, that would have been on a project list. There was someone, you give them time, who's in charge of that project, when's the due date. Oh my God, we're in a whole new world.
Yeah, I've heard it said that ChatGPT is not going to take jobs away. It's actually going to create more jobs for those who run with it, because they'll have so much more work. And you've just explained that. And interesting, you're talking about getting fit. A friend of mine, he was a good runner. He was a good cyclist. And he'd run a few marathons. He wanted to do ultra marathons. He had one problem: didn't know how to swim. And so he didn't go and buy books or watch videos. He went and got himself a swimming coach. And then he was able to do ultra marathons and do Ironmans and do Kona. But he didn't just jump in a pool and say, I'll work it out for myself. that would have been the end of his life. And so that's one of the things, isn't it?
I had 3 coaches for Ironman: a swim coach, a run coach, and a bike coach. And I hated all 3 of them. Running, I want to stop at the first block. I want to stop at the first mile, and it never goes away. Just because you run 26 miles, I wanted to stop at the first stop sign in one block. And they'd always say, well, aren't you getting a runner's height? No, I'm not. This is not fun. And then on the bike in Phoenix, all you do is, if you don't get run over by a car, it's a victory. But the swimming one that you mentioned, that was the hardest one, because that's like running is like fast walking. Not a lot of skill. Biking doesn't need that much skill, but oh my gosh, swimming, that's like gymnastics. You're thinking of a million things trying to keep, oh my God, it was just exhausting. But I did it 3 years, and now I just do, I went back to the fun things.
Yeah, my friend used to say, when he did those Ironmans, he said, when he got out of the water after swimming, he said he had no trouble finding his bike because he was the last guy out of the water, but he said he could catch him up. Hats off to him.
It comes back to dentistry, because I got really burned out after 3 years, and I said, well, what exercise? Well, I'm a 3rd generation wrestling guy. My boys all wrestled for a decade, so I went and joined a jiu-jitsu gym. That's the modern wrestling now. That they didn't have Brazilian jiu-jitsu in Kansas when I was a kid. They didn't even have it in Arizona when my 4 boys were in. We never even heard of it. But then the internet came along and YouTube and all that. But it's fun to go roll around on a mat with some guy, and that was fun. But bike, swim, run, and that same thing with dentistry. I was talking to a dentist. I've talked to dentists that said they'd rather be beat with a belt than do a molar root canal. I said, well, dude, don't do more root canals because it's going to take the smile off your face. And then you're not going to like driving to work. Then you're going to burn out. And what happens if you retire? Because look at that income. You know, I know some incredibly rich dentists that are like maybe 75, but every year starting at 65 or 60, they said every year they're going to work an hour less and make $1 more. And now this guy's almost 80. I think he's 74, and he's down to Mondays and Wednesdays from 6 to noon, and he's still dropping 100 grand. Now, if you dropped 100 grand, if you take 100 grand, and let's say you had you could get 5%, just for easy math, 5% government bonds. So you take $100,000 divided by 0.05, he'd have to have $2 million more of tax-free government guaranteed bonds at 5% to compensate for his 100,000, and he's not burned out. I noticed when I completely stopped doing everything, it got pretty boring after about 2 years. I mean, I did it at 60, and I didn't even do it for a whole 2 years of nothing, and so I think having something to do. A lot of people say, "Well, I'm going to golf a lot." Well, there's 168 hours in a week. If you golf 3 times a week, okay, that's 12 hours. You still got another 152 hours to kill. And then the worst thing is idle hands, because, I love to eat. Well, if you're bored, what are you going to do? You're going to go to a restaurant. You're going to eat. I mean, I unfortunately, there's nothing I don't like to eat. And so I think having to get up and take a shower and go into work is just a healthy, stimulating thing. Even if I even come in Dentaltown and only work 2 or 3 hours, by the time I get home, it's still almost lunchtime or noon or whatever. Usually I'll work out in the morning, come down here, maybe go to lunch with a couple people, and then I'm done for the day. But it's more intellectually stimulating than, say, I was just going to go golf every day. You know what I mean? I'm not taking anything with golf. It just didn't
I'm
work
with
for
you
me.
on that, Howard. When I was a dentist, I used to golf twice a week. When I retired from dentistry, I was golfing twice a month. And a couple of years ago, I had a sciatic nerve issue. This year, I've golfed twice this year. So, I'm not doing that enough. The arthritis in my hands is probably stopping me from really getting back. I figure I've got another year before I have to give the golf up. But I'm still a member of a few clubs because I just want to get back there. But one of the things I hate about golf is the guys that just keep jabbering on about golf all the time. Sometimes
I'm convinced I found the cure for arthritis. I really am. In your
what
hands.
is it?
Well, YouTube, there's all these doctors on there. I'm a big fan of Peter Alty and some others, but they said that there's no arthritis in your hands for people who can hang on a bar for 2 minutes. And so my mom, sisters, everyone, myself, where you're starting to get like it's like carpal tunnel. I remember on Dentaltown, someone told me, well, the reason you have carpal tunnel is because you never put your hands flat on the floor and do push-ups. If you did 10 push-ups every morning, you'd never get carpal tunnel. And a lot of people piled on and said that was the best thing they ever did, pressure. But I evidently, if you can hang on a monkey bar or a bar for 2 minutes, you pretty much don't die that year. And you have like something like 2/3 less cancer and things like that. I mean, there's a couple of tests, and I don't know, maybe when you're hanging on the bar, that maybe the pressure makes some white blood cells turn into osteoclasts and eat old stuff, or makes who knows? I don't know why it works, but a lot of people on YouTube said it, and I entered that in my routine, and I am embarrassed to say that when I started doing that a year ago, I mean, I could only hang for like 10 seconds. I'm like, what the hell's wrong with me? And it took me, same thing with planks. I remember when I started in Ironman, I started doing planks. I mean, I could only count to 10, and it took forever to get to a 2-minute plank. But if you can do a 2-minute plank and hang by your hands for 2 minutes, they say you don't have back issues and arthritis. And I mean, you might have maybe rheumatism is a whole different disease. I don't know if that applies to all that, but try hanging by a bar. And if you can get up to 2 minutes, you should get rid of a lot of that stuff in your hand.
I'll give anything a go, and it's a lot less expensive than having to take pills and
Right.
snake oil. Yeah.
Yeah.
I thought I was getting excited when you said hang on to a bar, like
A beer at a bar.
Yeah, that'd be good. But Yeah. Hey, I'm just going to do my exercise. Yeah, I'm going in
And
the
for you
bath.
guys listen to this, I'm 61 years old. I was born in 62. But if you're 40 and you think you're young and all that, and you're in shape and all that, trust me, go try to hang on the swing set bar. Just find a bar and see, and turn on your phone, your clock, your timer, and see if you can hang for 2 minutes. You'd be surprised at how many fit people just can't do that simple deal. And when they do, it's a game changer. I mean, when I just hang on it, the whole 2 minutes, I can actually feel my spine like unhinging. I mean, and sometimes I'm hanging, I'll start twisting. I feel like I'm at a chiropractor getting an adjustment. I mean, moving is the key. Everyone needs to eat less and move more.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's something I did 20 years ago, was decide that I needed to eat less and move more, and I lost 40 pounds. And COVID was really good. We were talking before about not traveling. Well, with COVID and not traveling, you're not in airports, you're not in hotels, you're at home every day. You can have an exercise routine, and so that helped me lose some weight then. And I've been very conscious of making sure that I walk 6.5 miles or 10 kilometers every morning, no matter what time I'm up. This morning I was out at 5:30. Tomorrow I'll be out at 4:30 to get it done. 1 degree our temperature, which is 34 degrees. You probably don't even have 34 on your scale in
Oh, that's
Arizona.
right. You're in winter now.
Yeah. It's 134 in Fahrenheit there where you are. It's 34 in Celsius where we are. It's cold.
Yeah.
But that's a great tip, and you're right. And I love you winding back to what you said about when you quit dentistry, and my financial advisor said this. He said guys that quit and then they end up doing nothing. He said they just go downhill real quick because they haven't got enough to stimulate their mind. And so keeping your mind active, even if it's doing dentistry or doing a business thing, is really, really good. But a colleague of mine said this to me 40 years ago. He said, dentistry is a unique business because you can wind it back. Like if you own a bakery, people want bread 7 days a week. You can't say I'm only baking bread on Mondays and Wednesdays, but your dentist friend, you can still work the hours that you want. You can wind it back. And that's a really good little asset to have. But as you know, and I know, that day when you hang up your drill, it's kind of like the day you sell your boat, isn't it? Sometimes it's one of the happiest days of your life. I miss the patience, but sometimes I don't miss the drama of being a practice owner. How do you find it?
Um, Dentaltown, I feel the social deals of coming to Dentaltown are what I miss the most about the clinical dentistry. Seeing the patients, seeing your staff. I think the social, I mean, doing your 10,000th MOD filling is not going to get me real excited. A crown prep, I mean, if you're oohing and awing over a crown prep after 10,000 crown. So much of the dentistry was like, been there, done that forever. And the one thing I'd have to say, the challenge on the clinical dentistry is it was getting harder and harder and harder for me to see. I mean, I had lights on my head, I had 3.8s, I had overhead lights, and I just knew at 60 I could not see like I could at 25. I mean, you just can't. So the only thing I was having an issue with was seeing, and that's pretty damn important because I do think seeing is the number one improvement in quality. If you can go from naked, vision to 2.5 loops to 3.8 or a microscope, the bigger you can see. I think quality is mostly related to magnification and desire. I mean, some people truly don't care, but if you really care and you can really see and you really got the tools and burrs and you can do it. But I think it was the social camaraderie stuff that I missed the most. And it's just fun to come in and see your teammates and you're all working on the same project and you have a shared vision and a shared goal and all this stuff. And the other thing, the reason I've always had a longing to help our replacements. I mean, I remember when I graduated from dental school, my mom and dad cried. Well, that wasn't from anything we did. That was from what everybody that for generations before, they made dentistry such a sovereign, sacred profession that when you graduate, your parents cried. And now we're graduating, and there's always the demons in dentistry. It used to be that I mean, oh my gosh, I remember I've talked to lecturing. I talked to so many dentists that were 90 to 100 years old. I even went to one dentist and stayed with him for 3 days. He was 92 and still practicing. And I said, I'm sorry, I'm not going home. I'm canceling. I'm going home to your house. He said I could go stay with him, go to work with him. And I just had to see this stuff. I mean, I met a 95-year-old dentist in LA a couple of years ago that survived Auschwitz. And to hear their stories, like this one in St. Joe, when he graduated from dental school, he was an outdoor dentist. And he graduated, I think, in 27, the Great Depression, or the stock market crash in 29. But for that to ripple down to the poor, that was 32 to 36. And because I asked him, I said, what was the greatest thing that ever happened to dentistry? I knew he was going to say the high-speed handpiece. And he said it was the Great Depression. And I said, what? Why was that good? He goes, well, all the prices crashed so low that the dentist for the first time could afford to go inside. And when we all went inside, we just kind of dropped the boot polishing and the trimming the hair, and we quit being dental barber surgeons, and we just became dental surgeons. We dropped the barber thing, and that was when and then, and I heard that in several countries, some other countries. And I mean, and then when I got out of school, it was capitation, and then it was PPOs, and now it's DSOs, and there's always some demon of the day. But the bottom line is, when I go to France, when you get a prescription from your doctor, it's loaded on a smart card, and you go to an ATM machine, and a little bottle comes down, 20 pills come in, a label comes around, and there's your prescription. You can automate a pharmacist, but you're never going to automate a dentist because somebody is touching you. You're selling the invisible. I mean, when you go to a hotel, when you check in, how come they put a paper slip around the toilet? Because you didn't see the maid clean it. They're selling the invisible. There's a plastic deal over your glass because you didn't see if it was washed or new. You get a straw. It's got paper on it. Well, they have to sell the invisible. So they leave all these little clues that there was a maid in the room, and you got fresh seats, and everything's fresh and clean, and there's a chocolate under the pillow. Dentistry is all trust. I don't know what you're talking about. I don't know. I mean, when I tell you have 4 cavities, you don't know. And we see that in dentistry. If you get 3 new patients from marketing and all 3, each one needs a filling, only 1 out of 3 gets the treatment done. But if they are referred from a friend or loved one or one of your patients, 2 out of 3. So it tells you that 1 out of 3 isn't going to do anything they're told. And we're selling invisible. So if someone told me I could trust David, 2 out of 3 are going to get it done. But if no one told me to trust it, I'm coming in, oh, okay, so 50% off a new cleaning. And now Dr. Moffet says I need 4 fillings at $250 a piece. So I get it. I get it. $1,000 of fillings, and I'm coming in for a free cleaning. Oh, I get it. There's just no trust. So dentists are always going to be selling invisible. That's why the number one thing is to reduce staff turnover. One of my greatest claims to fame is I kept my first assistant day one, 30 years, Jan. I mean, when I left, the new, the hygienist, everybody's been, even at Dentaltown, I still got the first 3 programmers I ever hired. Lori's been with me. All these people have been with me. In fact, the joke in the office when they've been with me longer than my first wife. My first wife made it 20 years. So it's always a big deal if they made it longer than Howard's wife. But the deal is if I come to a dental office, and that's why these DSOs, I love DSOs because anything that adds competition. I remember growing up in America, when I was 10, they didn't let Japan and Germany sell cars in America because they were very naughty at World War II. And GM had half the market and their cars sucked. And on Saturday, everybody you knew was in the garage trying to get their Ford working, their Chevy working. And then they lifted the sanctions and you start seeing these little German Volkswagens, these little Japanese Datsun B210s that didn't break down for 100,000 miles. And GM went from having 50% of the market to 30%. Now Nissan took that 20%. And competition is good. When the DSOs came here, man, they're better at locations. They're better at marketing. Nobody was open 7 days a week until a DSO came here. And now when your kid falls off a bicycle on a Sunday, there is a doctor of dental surgery open. And it's not going to be the rich guy our age, cutting back to 3 days a week. It's going to be a DSO. They employ our colleagues. They come out of school. Back in my day, if your dad or mom wasn't a dentist, you could only join the military or public health or Indian public health, the government, whatever. But now these kids can get jobs anywhere, these DSOs. But they're easy to compete against because their turnover is insane. They can't keep a dentist a year. And they'd always get new patients. Oh, I went there and the guy said I need 3 cavities. So I signed up and I went in to get him, and then he was no longer there. Then they gave me a new dentist, and the new dentist said I had 4 cavities. And it's like, what, what? So I started talking to my friends, and Shirley said, go see Howard, So, I want a lot of competition to serve the patient, but it's when a patient takes out a coin and goes to a dentist and says, will you fix my tooth? And it's usually pain. My tooth hurts. Can you do a root canal, billet, and crown? Or can you extract it and place an implant in the crown? And if you can get them out of pain with those 2 procedures without hurting them, and they trust you, you're going to kick it. You're going to crush it in dentistry. And a lot of these dentists are complaining about dentistry. It's, it's not fair. They don't realize how lucky they are to have that job. Like a lot of people in dentistry say that, they're in the top 10% income in the United States of America. So one of the richest countries in the world, and you're in the top 10% and you're complaining about it. I mean, that's just a bad attitude. I mean, the other 90% of Americans work less than you, and you're not falling off a cell phone tower. You're not falling off a shrimp lobster boat. You're not, having a combine cut your hands off. I mean, it's an inside job. You got air conditioning. So I love the patients the most, the staff the most, the people the most. And I think dentistry is going strong. And I hope that this Dentaltown AI helps them do dentistry faster, easier, higher quality, lower cost, scalable, playing with a full hand.
Well, I hope it's certainly going to help the C-type dentist, the guy who's got the engineer brain, the school teacher brain, because he's going to want all that information so he can lecture his patients on how, that's one of the things I hear from staff a lot. They say, the trouble with our dentist, he just tries to give the patient a dental degree, instead of just telling them, this is what you're going to look like, this is how, you're going to be out of pain and you're going to look great. No, he tells them how they're going to make everything. But getting back to what you said about DSOs, Howard, so DSOs have been around a long time, but you said that they still have high turnover of dental staff, of dentists. Why is that?
Well, I don't think anybody goes to school 8 years to get a job. I think they go to school 8 years to be the master of their own destiny. And I think self-mastery, it's like, say I'm a woman dentist and I got 2 kids in school. I want to decide if I want to get off at 2:00 and go to her piano recital or watch her school play. I'm a doctor, and now I got some office manager telling me that I got to submit my vacation time and it's denied and this and that. And it's like the hygienist, man. I mean, hygienists have enough going on without you ordering their supplies. I mean, you're ordering their hygiene supplies. Now she's all upset because she doesn't like this prophy paste or this whatever the heck. It's like, look, the hard part is you being happy. You order your supplies, I'll order mine. And self-mastery is a big deal. And I just don't see anybody with the mindset that I want to be a physician, a dentist, a lawyer. And I think the market's going to end kind of like lawyers. Lawyers, 50% of them stayed solo and 50% did group practice. And you see law firms, and sometimes you need a law firm if you want to be full service and have someone in all the different branches of law, or you're working with a client that's got locations in Phoenix and Sydney and DC and Berlin. But I think it'll shake out in the end where probably 50% will be in group practice. And as far as group practice, I think I think the when I go into a rural area and say the town's got 20,000 people, and they'll put a group north, south, east, and west. Now they got scale for marketing, billboards on the radio show. They got 4 locations. I think the group practice will get half. I don't think they'll be. I know the big DSO chains aren't going to get half the dentists because they're just too big. And one of the things I've noticed in DSO chains, it's kind of like, look at fast food. McDonald's did so well, because they only gave you 1 franchise, and you had to make it with 1. Chick-fil-A, they came out. McDonald's has about 3 million. Chick-fil-A came out. Now they're doing 5 million a store, and they're closed on Sunday. And they're like, look, you only get 1 store. You got to be married. You got to have kids in school. You got to go to church every Sunday. The reason we're not open Sundays is because we expect you to be in the church. In America, that would be, most Sabbath is Sunday. Muslims are Friday, and Jewish are Saturday. And they only got 1 store. and they're doing 5 million a year. Then you go to like Subway or Burger King, and they'll sell you 10 stores. Well, if you own 10 Burger Kings or 10 Subways, I mean, you're not managing it. And the same thing with DSOs. When I go into a group practice and that office manager just has one location, this is her only job, and she owns it, it runs fine. But when I go to DSO and the office manager is running 4 locations, that means she's only managing your office 25% of the time, and it's a disaster. You know, they're going to find their place, but they're probably going to find that group practice has its advantage. If everybody's committed to this group, you know, they're not running 4 different groups like Subway or Burger King. And there's scales. I mean, some people, you know, women marry up. A woman dentist, her husband always has a great job. A dentist, you know, his wife was always the best looking girl. You know, I think the men just look at who's the hottest because it's very apparent that, you know, I watched all my friends get married, and it's like, okay, I know she's hot, but but whatever. And so women dentists, they don't have to work full time because if you're a woman dentist, your husband's probably an oral surgeon, an orthodontist, a banker, a lawyer, you know, a mechanical engineer. They marry up and they got a lot of money, and a lot of times, and there's still a lot of sexism going involved. Like if I'm a woman dentist and I'm married to a male dentist, guess who's going to go to the teacher parent conference? Guess who's going to help with the homework? Guess who's going to do the school? So they still have their maternal, paternal, sexist roles. And she's just like, look, I don't need the money, and I got to do all this home stuff, so I only want to work 2 days a week. Well, a group would be perfect for her. And now half the graduates are women dentists. And when you look at, if that sounds too sexist, I'm just trying to tell you what I see from my perspective. I grew up with 5 sisters and 1 brother. And, yeah, I think it's going to be challenging times, but dentistry is not going away. The patient's never going to understand what's going on. And you're going to have to touch me and give me a shot and do surgery. I mean, 90% of physicians in America never do any type of surgery. They don't give any anesthetic, no shots, no surgery. Dentists, everyone's a surgeon. And that means I have to touch you. I have to numb you up. I have to cut on you. I have to suture. I have to drill into a tooth. And that's a scary thing. And it's going to require selling the invisible, lots of trust. And when they look over, and it's always the same assistant, and every time they get their teeth cleaned, it's the same hygienist always. And every time they come in, it's the same receptionist. They trust that everything's normal here. But when they go into these big group practices, especially the big DSOs that have 100 to 1,000 locations, and every time they go in there, it's all different members, they lose trust. They lose faith. And the other mistake is when that young dentist goes and buys a practice, then realize that, oh my God, all the employees have been there for 30 years. They're all making $25 an hour. I could replace everyone for $15 an hour, and they're in a small town. And the next thing everybody in town goes, well, you know, that new dentist, you know, he got a job there. Everyone there quit. Yeah, nobody approved of this. They all quit. He's got all new people, and oh my God, I'd stay away from there. Because they couldn't read an X-ray and know if it was a good root canal or bad, but they saw that all the old team left, and so it's a game of trust, and that's why you don't want to buy beer at the grocery store. You don't want to see all your patients watching you carry out 2 cases of Bud Light every Friday. I mean, I'd buy my beer and be crazy 2 towns down. They still need to trust you.
Yeah.
And the word of mouth patient referral is worth 3 times of the marketing. They got to do less marketing and work more on all the referral systems, the in-office referrals. Because if my friend refers you, then you come in with trust and you'll buy twice as much. 2 out of 3 will buy instead of 1 out of 3 on marketing. So, you know, it's a game of trust.
You're raising good points. A friend of mine worked in a bottle shop, and he said the dentist who lived 2 doors up from him was in there every Friday buying a lot of booze, a lot of hard liquor. And he said there's only him and his wife live in that house. He said I'd be concerned if I was his patient. The other thing you mentioned about the patients knowing the staff, and I get this. So I see clients and they say, I want everybody in my office to be able to do everything. Be a front desk person. Be a dental assistant. Be a sterilization person. I said, your patients want to come in and they want to have the same two people. They want to get Batman and Robin. They want to get the Lone Ranger and Tonto. They don't want to get Batman and Tonto. They want them to match up. They want Tom and Jerry. They want the same two people all the time. They want to know that you work together. When I tell my dentist that you've got to be able to work like Torval and Dean. Torval never used to say, I'm going to jump now, and Dean never said I'm going to catch, or did I get them around the wrong way? But you know what I mean. They knew what each other was doing, and your patients know that. And ask any patient, do you want me to do this in 40 minutes or in 20 minutes? What are they going to say? No, doc, take your time. Yeah, I'm here for the long haul. No, 20 minutes, I'll take it. They never ask, is it cheaper for 20? They just want it over quickly. And that's another thing that dentists, they dink around too long with a drill. They got that drill and they dink and put it down. They're too slow sometimes, and you get the job done quick.
And the late Omar Reed, who I'll always remember his death because I felt so bad. The pandemic had just started. He was a good friend and a mentor, and he died. And I knew dentists were flying in from all over the world. And it's like, I don't want to go to a big group of people that flew in from all over the world because there's a pandemic. And I missed his funeral. I felt sick about it. But my gosh, where was I going with that on the pandemic and the?
Where Omar Reed and what he said about practicing and doing things quickly.
Oh yeah, he had this deal about the 90-second crown prep, and everybody thought, oh, he's a horrible dentist because only spends 90 seconds on crown prep. That's not what he said. He said that you drill, rinse, dry, look. Drill, rinse, dry, look. Drill, rinse. He said the drill only was touching the tooth for 90 seconds. The reason it took you 20 minutes, why did it take you 20 minutes to prep a tooth when the drill burr was only on the tooth for 90 seconds? He goes, man, if I was prepping a tooth for 20 minutes, I could completely drill out the whole crown, the root. I could dust out the whole tooth in a 20-minute prep. You know what I mean? So he was always saying, you don't, just get in there and do what you got to do. Don't drill, rinse, dry, load, drill, rinse, dry, load. Just get in there and prep your damn tooth. But everybody thought that him saying the burr only touches the tooth 90 seconds, that he only scheduled 90 seconds for a crown prep. So things got taken out of context.
He was a sage. He was probably the number one sage in dentistry. He told me back in 2010 that in the US, 95% of dentists reaching the age of 65 can't afford to retire because they haven't saved enough or earned enough, and so to replace their dental income by doing nothing. He said so. A lot of them keep going because they have to, rather than because they want to.
I think the best retirement program was taught to me by pretty much Greg Stanley. Do you remember Greg Stanley?
Yeah, I remember Greg Stanley. Yeah,
and he said everyone should retire. I mean, he basically here's my summary of knowing Greg for 30 years is that like Warren Buffett is the greatest investor of all time, but he only buys dividend stocks, and so the way you pick the stocks is they already earned your dollar. So So if you just reduce the stocks to the ones that pay dividends, why do you own a company that's not profitable? Well, that's the greater fool theory, where I'm buying it for $1 and I'm hoping someday David will give me $2 for my dollar stock. That's Bitcoin. It doesn't produce anything. And so so the dividend stocks, like I already bought an Apple. So I don't need to wonder how Apple's doing. I'm an Apple user. I upgrade my phone. American Express, Coca-Cola sells 1 billion bottles of water a day. Bank of America, Alphabet. I use YouTube every single day. Amazon, Kroger, Costco, Walmart, Home Depot. I mean, these people basically over my lifetime will pay you a nickel for about every dollar parked there. So if you Greg Stanley taught me, well, how many nickels are you living off of? So if you live off 20 nickels a year, say that's $1, and then each time I buy $1 of this stock, it'll make me a nickel. Well, as soon as my dividend stocks give me 20 nickels a year, I'm retired. And what that does for every dentist is neat, because they'll say, well, hey, let's take a cruise. Okay, well, that's going to be $5,000. For $5,000, how many shares of stock could we buy at Apple, Coke, Chevron, Amazon, a dividend stock. And by the way, if you want to look for the best dividend stocks, you just open up Warren Buffett's Berkshire Hathaway. Everything he owns pays a dividend, or he wouldn't buy it. It'd be like Bitcoin. I mean, if you bought all the gold in the world and fill about 7 swimming pools, and you come back in a year, it wouldn't have made you a cup of coffee. If you bought all the farmland in America, the dividend would be all the wheat and the corn and the oats and the silo. If you bought a house, you should be able to rent it out. You got the rental income, you have an asset. And the other thing is, I teach my grandkids, it's like, like Walmart. Well, I don't have to look at Walmart's 10Q and their annual report. I go to Walmart every week. And then you buy your grandkids shares of that, and you say, well, you're an owner. You own Walmart. Every dollar stock you have will give you a nickel until you die. But I always use the example of Home Depot. I said, look, here's how you don't have to look at those 10Ks annual reports. You go to Home Depot, all the time. Well, if you ever one day find yourself saying, Home Depot never has it. We always have to run over to Lowe's, and Lowe's is better. In fact, you know what? I don't even go to Home Depot anymore. Okay, well, that's when you unload your Home Depot. And if Lowe's stock pays a dividend, you could load up on Lowe's. I mean, I don't know who in the world could take out Walmart. I mean, they got 60,000 items as cheap. Costco, they only have 4,000 items. I mean, they get the best deals ever. So but here's what I noticed with dentists. It takes 2 points to navigate, right? And if all you're doing is putting money in a 401k, you don't get to retire, because you and your wife can justify any expenditures. We need a new car. Let's take a cruise. Let's take a vacation. But when it's always, well, what is the opportunity cost of that new car? Well, you want a $100,000 new F-350 pickup truck, but man, for $100,000, we could load up on more dividend stocks and move our retirement date up a year. Because here's what Greg Stanley noticed, and he told me when I was a young kid in '87, and I've noticed that my whole life, is that as soon as you don't have to do dentistry, oh my God, you don't have burnout anymore. You don't hate dentistry anymore. You don't do the procedures you hate. There are dentists that hate wisdom teeth. They hate molar endo. They hate children. Well, there's pediatric dentists. There's endodontists. There's oral surgeons. And then they don't have to, but because every time they go to spend a chunk, every time they go spend $5,000, now them and his wife sitting around saying, well, do you want $5,000 of more Walmart stock? Or do you really want to take a Caribbean cruise? And then they start thinking, I think I'd like that Caribbean cruise. I don't know. I think I'd like to retire 2 years earlier. I mean, but when people just sit there and say, well, I do the maximum contribution of 401k, they're just as likely to be burned out, depressed, all this stuff. And I think it's all financial. I think when you, like the Ironman. Okay, so I would tell my Ironman dentist, buddies that I did it with, I say, okay, so you think dentistry is hard and stressful, but on the weekends you do Ironman? I mean, who the hell wants to swim 2 miles down a river, ride 112 miles on a bike, and then run 26 miles? I mean, I'd rather be a pediatric dentist than run a marathon every day. And pediatric dentists working on kids is the worst thing ever. And God help the ones that do it. I don't know how, they must be wired completely different. But the bottom line is, when you don't have to do something, you find out you want to do it. But when your mindset says, I have to do this every day to make all my minimum monthly mortgage payments and car payments and everything, and it just starts screwed with their head, they burn out, they get disease, depression, they start drinking, drugging, whatever. And so just watch your nickels. And if you at the end of the year don't know how many nickels it took you to live off of, and how many nickels you got from your dividend stock, and the only way you make money is go in there and drill, fill, and bill, yeah, you're going to get burnout and disease and depression, and you're not going to like it someday. But man, when you don't have to do it, like Ironman, you don't have to do Ironman. You just decided this would be a good challenge. And then when you don't have to do it, you might think, I think I'm going to learn how to place implants. I know it sounds crazy, but I think that'd be a good challenge, like an Ironman. And then they get into implants, and they're not getting into implants because they just got divorced and they're remarried and they're broke and they need a bunch more money and they got all these monthly payments. That's a totally different dentist learning how to do implants than some dentist who's got his dividend stocks, keep his living low. He's living off his nickels from Walmart. But he just thinks, what would be really fun? I'm going to do an Ironman. I'm going to learn how to place implants. It's all an attitude. And get debt free, and your attitude will take care of all your burnout, disease, and depression.
Yeah, I tell you what, debt is a big driver, and sometimes it's a very painful message. It's the stick that drives a lot of guys, whereas the carrot is always a better incentive, I think. And I think, on that note, Howard, we're coming to the end of our time together today. You've shared some amazing insights into the past in dentistry, as well as in the future, as well as some financial advice for a lot of dentists who, I once had a discussion with David Maddow talking about dentists that I said, I'm seeing a lot of dentists that don't actually want to be dentists. They've got their education debt, they've got their practice debt, they got their wife debt, and they're just working to the day they can just get rid of it all and just end those debts. And I said, that's a lot. And Maddow said to me, he said, it's probably 50% or more that guys don't even want. And I said, I'd hate to be a patient of one of those dentists who hates actually being a dentist. That to me, coming back to customer service and loving what you do and loving the relationship and loving the fact that you're helping people and that they keep coming back to you no matter what, and they trust you and they believe you and they want to get, you can't take that trust away in dentistry. As you mentioned earlier, 20 to 25% of the population out there are happy to pay your price and don't care what your competitors charge because you give them good service. And that's a nice pool to work in, to swim in, when you can find all your patients in that 25% of the population. It's not the same 25% who go to the same nail lady or have the same lawnmower guy. They have different values for different things. But when you find those people who that's all they want in dentistry, it's really, really nice. And so for me, one of the turning points, Howard, was when back in the 80s, when dental insurers started setting up their own offices in Australia, we thought they were going to steal all our patients. Well, they did. They stole all our patients that were the whiners and left us with just the nice patients. It was really good. They took all the people who were price sensitive and they left the people there who wanted value and relationships. And that was a real turning point. So, Howard, we could talk for hours, as I said at the start, before we came on. It's always a pleasure to talk to you. If you want to come down and do another tour, let me know. It might not be 7 cities, but it could certainly be a couple, Melbourne, Sydney, and definitely Sydney would be on the cards. We could work something out for sure. But Howard Farran, thank you for being a guest today with me on the Ultimate Dental Podcast.
It was an honor and a privilege, and we'll have to do it again sometime.
We will, and really, really appreciate your time, and thanks for the tech support at the start as well. Always right. Nice. I've got one of them as well at home in Sydney. My son's a software engineer. I'm just trying to find where my mouse is. There it is. But always used to be the same with setting the VCR when you were going out. Some of us used to wait till the show started and then say, all right, I'm going out the door now, press the record button, and others could program the clock. Anyway, Howard Farran, thank you very much. Bye.
Thank you for tuning in to another inspiring episode of the Ultimate Dental Podcast. We appreciate each and every one of you for being a part of our dental community and joining us each week on this incredible journey. If you found value in today's episode and you don't want to miss out on future episodes packed with expert insights and actionable strategies, here's how you can stay connected with us. Firstly, hit that subscribe button. Whether you're listening on your favorite podcast platform or watching on our website, subscribing ensures you'll never miss an episode. Secondly, share the love. If you know a fellow dentist or colleague who could benefit from the wisdom and knowledge that we share here, please share our podcast with them. Also, please share the podcast on your socials by simply clicking on the social icons wherever you view or listen to this podcast. Together, we can all do our bit to elevate the dental profession. And finally, stay engaged with us. We love hearing from you. Your questions, comments, and feedback fuel our mission to provide the best content for your professional growth, your personal growth, and for your practice growth. Remember, your journey to creating a dental practice and a business life that you love is our mission, and we're excited to be your trusted guide along the way. Thank you for being a part of the Ultimate Dental Podcast. Until next time, keep smiling, keep striving, and keep on tuning in to the Ultimate Dental Podcast.